You're very welcome back. Now, recent reports surrounding climate change have reinforced the need for us to do more for the environment. Now, one way of doing this is by eating greener. And here with her tips on how to do this is nutritional therapist Heather Leeson. Now, when we say greener, we're not actually making green smoothies here. It's actually had to be
well, that's an option, but not today.
More sustainable and better, because I suppose over the last number of years, we've all heard the carbon footprint when it comes to you're eating too much meat, eating meat.
Exactly.
It's getting more serious by the day.
Food supplies 25% of greenhouse gas emissions, so we can all make small changes rather than a few people doing drastic changes. If all of us make a few small changes, we can really make a difference. And the great thing now as well is better for our health and better for our pockets as well.
Okay, so first of all, if you want to reduce your meat-free Mondays, people do that sort of thing. If you want to just cut it down a little bit, what are your suggestions? And what can you substitute to get the same nutritional value?
Well, it's about having less meat. So we don't all need to go vegan, but we do like our meat in Ireland. We're having it every day on average. So have a smaller portion and stretch your meat out like they would have done a generation or two ago.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're making something like a bolognese or a shepherd's pie or a curry, put in something like lentils or chickpeas. The beauty of lentils is they cook really quickly, so you can cook them with the dish. Otherwise, throw a can of beans or lentils or chickpeas in afterwards, and you're stretching the meat. You're not getting rid of it, but it's going further, and that's going to cost you less.
I didn't even think of that as well, because I know an actual portion of meat, I remember from my home economics back in the day, is actually, that's how long ago, it's the size of a cigarette box, basically, that's as much meat you should eat in a portion. Whereas when you think about it, if you're having a steak or even a chicken breast, is way more meat than that.
Exactly. Think of it as a flavour enhancer. That's not the main event.
Yeah.
And you can swap out, less red meat, because red meat is the one that is more has more impact on the climate. So you can swap it out for, yes, eggs, even other, fish or chicken dairy products. But what we do need to be eating is upping in our diet the stuff that grows.
Okay.
So not just veggies, but anything plant-based. So veggies, fruit, nuts and seeds, they're really sustainable. And also those pulses.
Because you can put things like cashew nuts and things like that in if you're having a stir-fried chicken stir-fry, and do the same things to reduce the actual meat content by adding things like this.
And even your standard recipes, you can add more veg in. You can always add more veg in. What we're aiming for in clinic, we're always aiming to get people to eat half of their plate at lunch and dinner as veg. And veg are always the cheapest things on the shopping list as well.
So we're looking at plant-based and seasonal as well, so we do need to eat more plant-based. And when we talk about seasonal, we have such an array of produce here in Ireland at the moment. We've just a selection of them there. So, I mean, when you talk about doing things like that for breakfast, though, how do you incorporate it into every meal? Because when I don't think of plants in a breakfast meal. It's just...
Well, I mean... Porridge, oats, for example.
I didn't even think of that, That's very
with
sensible.
Dairy, so Irish dairy is we are lucky in Ireland because even our meat and certainly our dairy products are much more sustainable than in other parts of the world. Now, we still need to cut down, but it's easy to add the plant-based side of things and pull down, the non-plant-based side of things. And there's a whole raft of products available. Now, it can be a little bit confusing because just because something is a vegan product doesn't mean it's either good for you or the environment.
See, that's the thing you'd have. So are we looking at just basically getting the raw materials here and nothing processed?
Yeah, ideally something that doesn't have a label at all. And hopefully the packaging will be going as well. That's another environmental issue. But there are really good products. I brought a couple in to studio. There's a great brand called Feed. It's an Irish brand, which is that white packet there. But the products that I brought in, the ingredient list on the vegetarian products that you're buying should look like a recipe if you're going to make it yourself. So you don't want loads of really...
And I love the way these they're cooked as well, because I remember when the company came out, I started buying the flavour is amazing, but they're cooked in, there's no great preservatives in them, they're sous vide or something like that, I think.
They're brilliant products. They're so handy as well. Really versatile and really good value as well.
And they're lovely.
Yeah, now one word of caution, if you're not used to eating loads of pulses, take it handy adding in the beans because they do have a
gastrointestinal side.
They don't suit everyone.
And
if there's people who have IBS, you want to maybe deal with the IBS or take it handy.
Take it handy. Like I've been that accidental soldier.
Exactly.
And we all have, and it's kind of overdosing, and the old cauliflower and cabbage as well is not the best idea.
Exactly. So take it handy and just get a couple of good plant-based recipes in your repertoire.
When we have these things like the falafel balls, that's made out of chickpeas. Now, that's processed, but would this be one of the better ones?
So some of them are processed with loads of artificial ingredients. They're good.
Yeah.
So again, the ingredient list should look like if I was making falafel at home, I'd have chickpeas, I'd have herbs, and that's about it, a bit of garlic and stuff like that. So really natural. And there's a few, like someone like The Happy Pear, they have a really great website for plant-based recipes.
Oh, they've really pioneered it in the country.
They really have. They've done a great job, and they're really generous with their information. They have a new book coming out as well. So try and get more plant-based foods in. And of course, on the other, now look at them there, they look like babies. That's their first book, I think.
They look like babies. They don't look like babies now, but they have evolved quite a lot over the years. I do know that. But there's loads of like simple recipes and things you wouldn't think of using, and even like reducing your food waste.
Now
I never knew you could use the tops of celery, for example, the leafy bits for soups, etc.
Everything. Don't waste your veg. So even the broccoli stalks, the cabbage, the leaves on the cauliflower.
Can you?
They just chop them up, throw them into a stir fry. Don't waste anything, because food waste. We waste 1 million tonnes of food a year in Ireland.
That's frightening. 1 million
half
tonnes.
of it in households, and more than half of that is what's called avoidable.
Yeah.
Like we're throwing stuff out that we should have used. So actually a little bit of, like, as if Simon always talked about, you know, a professional kitchen, planning a little bit, reducing your waste, find out what you are wasting.
Yeah.
If it's bread, which is the normal stuff, bread, dairy products, fruit and veg, just plan a little bit better. Do a meal plan. You don't have to have a fancy meal plan. I brought in, a lovely patient gave me that, and I stick it on the fridge.
Oh, it's a magnetic one. But that is quite handy. But it is important to do a meal plan, because I don't know about anybody else, but when I actually do my shop and I have things left, it's always the vegetables that seem to be the ones that I'm throwing out at the end, because we buy too far in advance. We're lucky in the fact that they're not over preserved here in Ireland. But you can't really buy a week's worth of vegetables, really, can you?
Well, it's hard. You can store them properly, but it's just about planning and using them up. And if something is looking a little bit tired, then just make a soup. Throw them all into a soup or roast them in the oven. And the same with fruit. You know, the old fruit bowl, good intentions. If the apples are too wrinkly for anyone to eat, chop them up and stew them. Don't peel them. That's waste. Just take the cores out, but don't peel them. Chop them up. Pears, plums, grapes, anything like that. And that's fruit compote, and that's what you'd have for your breakfast.
So basically, as long as there's nothing furry growing on it, they should be okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully, anyway. Heather,
cut the furry bits off.
God, I didn't even think of that, but thank you so much once again for joining us with your top tips. And now stay with us. We've lots more coming up after this quick break.